Unfortunately, I've been on the injured list lately. I haven't been able to skate as much as I would like to. However, today I want to get back into the groove. I'm at the local skate park. I want to dive into some practical tips on how to get better at transition skating. I can finally move my thumb all the way in. Well, not all the way, it's still stiff. But yeah, that's the goal today. Go over some practical tips while I get back into the groove. I had some ideas this morning. I was like, you know what? I need to just go to the skate park alone early in the morning, nobody else with me. So that's the first tip, is like go to the skate park really early so there's nobody around. You can kind of have the skate park to yourself. You don't have to feel like embarrassed or conscious about what anybody else is thinking of you there. You also don't have to worry about like taking turns, which is really nice. There's one other person here right now who's also just probably getting their groove on. Looks like they're just learning how to skate too. So let's get warmed up, and then I'll get into some practical tips that you can use to improve your transition skateboarding all around. So the other day I was at home and I was thinking of like a new trick in my head. For some reason I was thinking pop, shove it, pivot, body varial pop, shove it thing would work out. So I went to the skate park and ended up working a lot easier than I thought. And the lesson here that I want to get at is like, unless I thought this trick and started trying it, I wouldn't realize I could learn other tricks. So like throughout this process of trying to learn this pop, shove it, pivot, pop, shove it, body varial thing, I don't know what you call it, I realized I could probably learn pop, shove it, blunt fakie, because I kept falling into that, and then I kept falling into like pop, shove it, back Smith almost sometimes. So the point here that I'm getting at is like, unless you get out of your comfort zone, you're not going to learn new tricks. So just trying something different will allow you to learn something different. Typically when I'm going to spend a whole day trying to get better at transition or progress some new tricks or just skate transition for a long time, I think one of the things I do when I'm warming up is try not to pump too much. I try not to over pump, and basically the goal here is not to wear out my legs. I just want to do a couple basic grinds like I just did, a couple basic tricks, kind of get the body going, but I try not to like dive straight into the fire. So I try to wake my body up essentially, but I'm not like stretching or even doing dynamic stretches, really anything. So it's kind of like my version of jogging essentially. I'm kind of like jogging around the skate park, getting comfortable with the transition, getting comfortable with my body, the fluidity of it essentially. So now that I'm kind of nice and warmed up, I want to get into one tip that I thought about this morning that's really helpful whenever you're skating transition, but especially when you're trying to get comfortable with bigger transition. I'm going to use this obstacle behind me to make an example, and then I'm going to show you what I'm talking about and hopefully prove that this example is real and I don't just bluff. But right behind me is a pretty steep quarter pipe, and it's pretty narrow. It's pretty intimidating in general. It doesn't matter how good you are at skateboarding, beginner, expert, pro, it doesn't matter. That's an intimidating wall back there. One thing that I think really helps with these kind of walls is power sliding. I've gone into this technique before, but in specific is doing a little bit of a backside power slide and going into back Smith. I think back Smith is one of the most easy tricks to actually do on big transition. And when I say back Smith, I'm not talking about going over the very top, locking your back truck in, making it look all cool, and then going in. What I'm talking about is you actually kind of power slide up it. And the point here is that you're not lifting your front trucks up. You're not having a manual, which means you're gonna have to balance more. So when you're power sliding up and you're keeping contact with the entire ground, you have more momentum essentially. So you can kind of push your back truck into the coping versus trying to have to get to the top, lift it over, and then put it into place. So the point here, you're using more of your momentum to kind of push it, pendulum yourself onto the top, and go back in. I'll show you some examples. Hopefully you can get what I'm saying right here. Essentially, it's just about like not letting your wheels leave the ground. I think it just allows you to balance better. It's less scary. There's less like flailing, like, oh no, I'm losing my weight. It allows you to stay more compact. It allows you to keep your center of gravity like more with the ground, more with your board essentially. So I think that is one of the most crucial things. It's something that I do whenever I'm like at a new spot, or whenever I'm trying to get comfortable with transition again, big transition, I kind of just slide. I'll even kick turn backside really small and then make my way up there. And the higher you go onto something that has vert, like the wall behind me, the easier it's going to actually be to slide once you get up, because like you have gravity kind of working towards you. It wants you to go down, but as long as you're pendulating up some speed and you're sliding on like a vertical wall is a lot easier than sliding on some transition or a bank, and it will work to your advantage. And I think it's just a really good way to get comfortable with the transition of that motion of going up and coming down, and you're not having to like really balance yourself out. You're doing it one solid fluid motion, so you're not really stalling up there too long. You're just coming up, back, and down. I think this can really help you just get used to that transition. The goal here is not to like get into a locked backsmith or anything like that. It's actually not a backsmith at all. I take it back, but I think in your head it's kind of a backsmith. That's the motion you're going for. You're putting a lot of the weight in the back truck, so a lot of your weight is kind of sitting in the back. That way you're not flailing out. That's kind of the point. You just want to get used to that transition going up and down. Just take your time, work your way up to that transition. You could kind of, what I think is happening when I'm trying it here on this vert wall is like I'm going up and my front truck's almost hitting it because I'm power sliding, and then my back truck is hitting it way quicker, and then it's kind of sending me down. So I guess the point is like you want to scoot your back truck up so that it pushes you back down. I think doing this has just gotten me a lot more comfortable with it. At first I was actually really scared of that vert wall, just doing like the first couple, and then after like the fifth or sixth one I felt really comfortable to where like I could probably go up and actually go for a back pivot or something like that. So it got me used to the motion of that transition. It's also been kind of cold this morning, that's why I've been running the hood. But let's get the helmet on, get into some of these bowls, talk about like pull coping, different things like that. Well, I'm gonna get my keys out of my helmet. I'm gonna get into some practical tips as I get comfortable with some like pull coping, just getting back into the grind of skating some uncomfortable transition. I think that is the one tip that you always have to do, is you have to get into that uncomfortable transition in order to get comfortable with the transition. So let's jump into the bowl. Now I got my helmet on and dive in some different techniques about coping and just like hitting the lip of the transition. I also have like a custom helmet coming soon. The homie's been working on it. Super excited. It's been like a long time making. So yeah, excited to have a new helmet. This thing's been falling apart for a long time. So super hyped soon. Once I have that helmet, I think I'll be like more encouraged to wear it more often. I'll just be like more incentivized. When I put this helmet on, it's just it becomes like a sweat pocket essentially. Something else that I've been having a lot of fun with lately is like these ghost ollie frontside grinds. And it sounds super crazy. It sounds like a difficult trick to ollie truck bash grind, but that's not really what I'm trying to do. It's all about the shoulder turn. So you can do this on small transition, work your way up to big transition. I think this really helps when you're skating like tight transition, like backyard pulls, or even like small transition in a bowl in the shallow end, or just small transition that's tight. And really what it is, it's just about churning at the top and dropping that front shoulder really quick. So you're just going up and you're kind of snapping. It's much like going and rolling off a curb, only you're turning 180 when you're rolling off that curb. That's essentially what it is. So you're not trying to grind. Just now I was doing some in the deep end of this bowl, and I wasn't trying to grind at all. I was just going up and dropping that front shoulder really quick. Once I got to the top, dropping it. Now that doesn't mean I'm going straight up and down. I'm like drawing it out kind of wide, but once I get to the top, it's just like dropping that shoulder. And something about that kind of lets my truck lift into the coping and then out of the coping. And I think what it is that like there's not much weight on the grind. There's not much weight on my back truck. It's just that quick snap, quick turn, and then I'm kind of just like scraping through the coping. Like I said, I think you can really work your way up with this technique. You can start on something really small, just turning and snapping. Imagine it like a surf move, like you're trying to go off the wave or something. I think that's what really works. And then you can work your way up. Like I said, when I was doing it on some bigger transition, really wide, almost worked better than trying to think of a frontside grind when you're like really drawing it out. Something about just like dropping that shoulder, snapping, thinking of it like a curb, like you're going off a curb and you're just turning, not trying to grind. It just works really well. One thing I think happens often when you're trying to learn transition, you're a beginner, actually doesn't matter what level at transition you are, it's about finding your lines. A lot of transition bowl skating, etc. It's about finding your lines, like how you get to a certain place. Maybe you want to hit a certain wall, you want to do a certain trick. The one thing that I think works against you is when you're forcing that. And what I mean by that is, like, say I wanted to hit that corner pocket back there. If I just look at the corner pocket and I'm like trying to get there and I'm working against certain walls, like I feel like I'm falling down or whatever, that's where things are going wrong. You're going against the grain. It's kind of like snowboarding. I never like really snowboarded up to like 2 years ago, and what people kind of said is like, you got to go with the hill, don't go against it. It's kind of similar with bowl skating or transition skating. Like if I want to get to that wall down there, one way that I can figure that out, I'll show you real quick right now, kind of a test way. You can use a ball. That's totally reasonable. I've seen like Skate Park Lessons do that on his channel, use like a ball. Here's what I would do personally. If I had like a bowl, I was trying to like figure out how to get somewhere, a ramp or anything like that, I'd honestly just send my board down there like this. Check it out. My point being is that my board figured out the line for me versus me forcing it. So I know like I could probably drop in, hit that wall that my board hit, and then hit that corner backside. So that's a good way to do it. It's like literally throw your board into the fire, see which way it goes, and just realize like when you're working against a certain grain or you feel like you're falling in a certain direction, lean into it, fall into it, and just see what happens. That's the point I'm getting at. Like sometimes it feels like, well, I'm falling. If I lean in that direction, just fall in there, see what it feels like. Maybe you're not going to fall. Maybe it's actually going to be fluid and it'll work for you versus against you. Make sure you subscribe, hit that bell notification, hit that like button under the video, support the channel, join channel members if you really want to see more exclusive content. I'm building out a backyard DIY right now. All that content is in the channel members area. Super cheap, $4.99 a month. You can cancel at any time. Appreciate y'all. Mash.